Welcome. This is going to be Just Human, episode 343. Glad you're here. I'm glad that we have some fall weather. I saw a cool graph just a while ago before I was like setting up all my tabs and things, showing bird migration and how it was like really speeding up because winter is coming or fall is coming, whatever. But what it really means to me is hoodie weather is coming. Hoodie and jacket weather is my favorite kind of weather. And it's been beautiful here in Southwest Virginia. Me and my dogs have been enjoying it quite a bit. It's been a while since I've shown the dogs on screen. So there's Hercules and his sister Athena on the trampoline. That's one of their favorite spots. You can see there's tons of leaves on the trampoline, mostly from the neighbor's tree. The neighbor has a huge tree, like 40 something foot or more, tree that always turns, always goes dormant before basically any other tree in the neighborhood. It always goes real quick and dumps all of its leaves into our yard. And theirs too, but a significant amount fall in our yard. It's okay. They're good neighbors. But my dogs love the trampoline, and that is one of their happy places. And so every time we go outside and they run around, the trampoline is a place that they always go to and lounge around and also wrestle on. So it's funny. We got the trampoline, and it's huge. We got it for our two boys several years ago, and I think the dogs use it more than anyone. It's the dogs. It's their spot. Anyway, it's been a while since I've shown them on stream, and they're always they're always back here, like they are now, snoozing after breakfast, taking their morning nap. So I hope if you are out there and you're a dog lover like I am, and you don't have a trampoline for your dogs, I'm going to go ahead and suggest it. It's a pretty good thing to have for dogs. They like it a lot. There is a bit of a concern with them getting on and off, like they could get injured a little bit, but ours have never been injured on it. I'm just saying, like, it is quite a jump. When they jump off, it's sometimes a bit awkward. And I noticed that they jump off at the same place because there's a slope and the ground's a little bit closer to them on this one side. I've thought about buying some of those big blocks that they use for dogs, like that they make like stairs and obstacle courses out of. I thought about getting some of those and putting them next to the trampoline to make like a staircase for them. Anyway, I recommend trampolines for dogs if your dog is big enough that it can get on and off safely and easily. Maybe I don't it's a funny place to start the show. Anyway, this show is not going to be all about dogs. This show is going to be about the Comey arraignment, and just Comey in general. The last episode we covered McCabe, and we've been on the Comey kick. This will be like the fourth episode in a row that's been about Comey. Let's see. When I go to my playlist of podcast, it's been Comey indicted and more thoughts on Comey and being indicted, and then reviewing the OIG report on McCabe in light of the Comey indictment. And today's going to be Comey arraigned. So it's been 4 Comey episodes in a row, and I'm told that people really hate Comey, and people also love to be outraged. It seems like online, everywhere I go online, people love to be outraged. So making videos about Comey should be good, right? So we're going to go over Comey arraignment and some documents that have to do with that. And I promised that we would go over the IG report on Comey's memos, which may be part of the indictment. We don't really know what the indictment is based on. We know a little bit, but not enough. Not enough to really, we don't really know. It's like the most minimal indictment ever. It's as minimal as it can possibly be. And I think that's on purpose because they're going to do a superseding indictment at some point in the future, or at least that's the idea. But I'm going to catch you up to speed on all that stuff. And I don't think we're going to go through the entire IG report on Comey's handling of his memos. As I had said before, But what I want to do today is I want to like give you the information you really would be interested in without getting too heavy into the documents. And then after I do that, dive into documents, or if I'm feeling like it, if I'm kind of burned out on the Comey stuff, which is 50-50 on that, we'll get into some other news because there are other news stories. I haven't really decided yet. I'm making it up as I go. This is only my second cup of coffee, so I'm barely awake. I don't know why I switched back to this screen. I should go back to this screen and tell you guys that my link tree is where you can find all the places to follow me, all the places to watch, all the places to listen, and all the ways to support the show. You can find my link tree, a link to it, in the description of this show or in my profile, wherever you're watching this. You can find it there. You won't find it on True Social because True Social won't let me post my link tree anymore. I don't know why, but I can't post. There's several links that I can't post on True Social anymore. I can post Rumble links, and I can post some news article links, and I can post Thread Reader app links. I can't post my link tree, and I can't post my X, and I can't post my Substack. It seems. This started about a month ago, and True Social just deletes any post I make that has any of those links in it, which is pretty weird and kind of sucks. So you won't find it there, but you will find it in my profile. It's still there in my profile on True Social. Anyway, thank you to everybody who's a supporter and who has made purchases recently at Benson Honey Farms. Continued prayers for Mo Benson and her family as she recovers from surgery. Bootleg products, if you are going to be making some chili, hoodie weather means chili weather, like as in the delicious food that you eat. And you can also get great salsa. Salsa is good any time of year. Seasonings are good any time of year. Sauces are good. Their chili, I'm told, or at least last year, chili was their best selling. It's like their number one product. And their chili is, oh, it's good. Oh, it's so good. Cannot recommend that enough. Their salsas are also phenomenal, and their seasonings. I love their seasonings. So Bootleg Products, thank you very much to everybody who's made a purchase there. Also Benson Honey Farms. It's a good time of year to be putting honey in your coffee or in your tea. I prefer honey on my French toast and my waffles and other things like that. I don't use syrup because when you buy syrup at the store, it has corn syrup in it. It's not actually maple syrup. It's nasty, absolutely terrible for you corn syrup. But an even better thing to put in it is 100% raw honey you can get from Benson Honey Farms. Also, Ko-Fi, if you want to buy me a cup of coffee, keep me caffeinated, I really appreciate it. UK Neil bought me some recently, going over the Comey indictment. He's not outraged by it, though. He and I both are, we still think Comey is our homie, and we also think Comey is Trump's homie, but that's the sub narrative to all of this. That's not the main narrative. Thank you to everyone who keeps my coffee cup full. I certainly need coffee to go through documents. Manly Cans link, if you're looking to buy some gifts, you can buy some Manly products over at Manly Cans, and if you use my link, they kick a few dollars my way. Merch store, if you want to buy yourself a coffee cup, which is the best thing on there, or any other merch. And then the absolute number one best way to support the show is substack.com, justhuman.substack.com. A paid subscription here is the number one way to support the show. I have all my articles over here, which I don't do that many per year, but I do some. Articles on information, articles on being inspired. And then this is where I put all of my podcast and videocast through. I put them out on Substack, and then it publishes them to whatever player you want to use, Podbean or Spotify or Apple Podcast, whatever. But it comes out over here on Substack first. Okay. And then X is where I do most of my posting these days and my threading. And it's my threads that we're going to go to start covering the Comey indictment. So let me catch you up on news that you need to know before we get into what actually happened at the indictment. Or at the arraignment. The Comey arraignment. He's already been indicted. That was in episode 3 episodes ago. So, a couple days ago, October 7th, the day before Comey gets arraigned, we learned that 2 U.S. attorneys have been added to the prosecution team of Comey, okay? And we know that Lindsay Halligan is the acting U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. Trump, the guy who was there, he resigned over disagreements about the Letitia James prosecution and the Comey prosecution, allegedly. He resigned because of that. Other people in the office also resigned or were fired. And that office is, the Eastern District of Virginia office is in a bit of turmoil right now, it seems. And some of the people that have been fired or let go or who resigned are running to media and becoming anonymous sources, and some of them name sources in news articles. So as you see news articles, and we're going to go through some over the course of this show, it doesn't mean that the sources for them are probably disgruntled employees or could be disgruntled employees, formerly of the Eastern District of Virginia office, U.S. Attorney's Office. That doesn't mean that what's in the story is not true, but it could mean that what's in the story is coming from a disgruntled employee. And as you guys know, I went somewhere the other day and there was a disgruntled employee still working, and they were complaining to me as they served me about how disgruntled they were with their current employer and their current supervisor. And as you know, you're getting a slanted view. You know, as I'm getting served, I'm getting a slanted view of what's going on in that establishment from this disgruntled employee. And you just have to factor that in. Maybe everything they say is 100% true. They're completely right to be disgruntled. And even though they shouldn't be telling the customer about why they're upset with their supervisor and their employer in general, it doesn't mean they're wrong to be upset or that they don't have a valid complaint, right? And so the news stories that are being generated by people who have left the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia, you should be aware that that could be or is their source, is this former employee of that place, and they might be a bit disgruntled that they're no longer working there. And so what they say may be slanted in a certain way, or they may have a certain objective, a certain intention about what they're sharing in order to frame the news article in a way that they like. This is not abnormal. This happens all the time. We saw it earlier this year with a bunch of people that were fired from DOJ or who resigned in protest to some changes that were made. What did they do? They ran to the New York Times and to other news outlets to try and talk about how bad things were, right? And you've probably seen lots of news stories like that. Doesn't mean those people are insincere or that the information they have is completely wrong and you should dismiss it, but you should factor in who they are and where they're coming from, and you don't salt that information. And because the Eastern District of Virginia's office seems to be in turmoil and there seems to be disagreements about two indictments in particular, a potential indictment of Letitia James for the mortgage fraud thing, which I might talk about later in this show because there's something about it you should know, and this one here of former FBI Director Comey. So it seems that office needs some help. And Lindsay Halligan has recruited, as of this week, 2 U.S. attorneys from the Eastern District of North Carolina to go to the Eastern District of Virginia and help her out. Those 2 attorneys are Nathaniel Lemons and Gabriel Diaz. Lemons was managing assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of North Carolina, and Diaz was the national security chief. These aren't newbies. These guys have been there for a while. I have to wonder if they had anything to do with that seashells on the beach 8647 post on Instagram that Comey made that everybody got really, really upset about. If these guys had anything to do with investigating that, I know the Secret Service investigated it, but did the U.S. Attorney's Office for that district also look into it? Because maybe first contact was made. Maybe these guys, made some contacts during that. I don't know. Maybe they've already looked at Comey before. I don't know. Maybe not. Just a thought. Comey's arraignment was moved, though. It was supposed to be today that I'm recording this on Thursday, but it got moved to 10 a.m. on Wednesday, which is fine with me. And one of the reasons they did is because there's another case happening at that same courthouse today, or cases. They have some security issues, and it just made more sense for it to be moved to Wednesday. It would just be easier, apparently. And so that's what they did. And has to do with the judge and the courthouse. This is how the judge and the courthouse are running things, and they moved it. And there's some other things about the arraignment that people are complaining about, but you need to put blame where it's due, if blame is even the right word. And that's the way the courthouse runs, is up to the courthouse and the judges there, not up to DOJ or defense attorneys. Now, speaking of defense attorneys, Comey's defense attorney is Patrick Fitzgerald, who is the Patrick Fitzgerald, the longtime prosecutor and the former special counsel who prosecuted terrorist Abdel Rahman and Ramzi Youssef, and also prosecuted Scooter Libby and Rod Blagojevich, who Trump pardoned, if you recall, Conrad Black, and many, many, many others. It's that Patrick Fitzgerald, who is a longtime friend of Comey and who is one of the people Comey gave one of his infamous memos to in 2017 after Trump fired him, which we'll get into those memos later. But if this case has to do with those memos, that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird. But Patrick Fitzgerald is a longtime former prosecutor and has been defense counsel, and this is high caliber. This is high caliber, right? Now, at the arraignment, it's going to go ahead. We're going to go through, I have a short thread on the arraignment, which is going to lead us to basically all the places I want to go. And then we'll take whatever rabbit trails I choose to take while we're there. But as we go through this thread, I'm going to let you know the court schedule, which is probably going to change anyway because there's going to be a superseding indictment. There's some comments from both prosecution and defense counsel. And then we're going to talk about who person 3 could be and why each possibility for person 3 is problematic for the prosecution. So Comey appeared about around 10 a.m. He was one of the first people into the courthouse, according to news media who was there. He went in through a side entrance, not the front, where there were some probably the usual cuckoos and useful idiots and protesters who show up to everything. Any times there's going to be camera, you have these types of people who just want to be on camera and hold some sign and have painted faces. It's a circus act. Whether it's Trump or it's Comey or whoever it is, there's always this circus act of people. And sometimes they're on the left, sometimes they're on the right. Most of the time, they're just cuckoo birds. And then there's trolls. There were trolls there from the right. The gremlin, if you know who I'm talking about. The gremlin was there doing gremlin things. All the usual suspects were there outside the courthouse. And the courthouse arranged for Comey to enter through a side entrance, and it made it just easier for the courthouse to manage everything about that. There's a lot of complaints about that, saying there's some sort of special treatment. But I think that's pretty silly, honestly, because special treatment is special treatment, quote unquote, is what they're calling it because they don't like Comey. And they want him strung up. They want him perp walked. They want him in cuffs and an orange jumpsuit. They want him embarrassed and undignified and all of these things, which is they're coming from a place of hatred. And they want to see him treated like, say, Roger Stone was or someone else who they think is good. And Roger Stone, I would not use that adjective to describe him for sure. But the thing is, the courthouse, the interests of the courthouse are to keep things secure and for things to run efficiently. And it would not be secure nor efficient for Comey to come in through the front entrance and get swamped by a bunch of media from both the right and the left, and all the protesters and all the trolls and everybody else who was there, and have him deal with that all of that mess. Whether it's Comey or it's Sean Combs or it's SBF or it's Ghislaine Maxwell, or it's Trump when he was going in and out of courthouses for his hearings, or it's anyone else, whether it's a terrorist or a drug runner, anybody who is going to attract attention from media and from trolls and from protesters and the general public, that's going to create security issues, and it's going to create efficiency issues of the court running and operating. And so in those situations where courts expect that, they make arrangements for the defendants to come in and out in a more efficient and secure way. They do the same thing for the jury, right? And they do the same thing for other people who need to have business to conduct in the courthouse. So I just think it's a silly thing to complain about, but it makes for good outrage bait, which is like 90% of what you see online these days, right? And that's all that is. Anyway, there's my little rant about that. Comey was arraigned on false statements and obstruction of congressional proceeding. He pleaded not guilty, of course. Judge issued an order, and that order set a trial date. The problem is that trial date is 9 months ago, January 5th, Monday, January 5th, 2025. And so that's a problem because, you know, I don't think either party has a time machine. And so they can't like go through this process and then jump in a time machine and go back to January 5th of this year and have the trial. That's not going to work. That's not going to be efficient. Probably not secure either, because I'm not sure the safety ratings on time machines these days. But, you know, if things go wrong, they would probably go wrong in a really bad way. So they're going to have to issue a new order, or a motion's going to have to be filed asking for a date that's in the future instead of in the past for the trial to occur. But the other dates he set seem to be in the future. So we'll take a look at those. The judge wants things to happen pretty quick in this case. There's not much to it, right? It's a false statements charge and an obstruction charge. How could this take very long? And the judge, that's how the judge is treating it. He's like, let's go. Let's go, guys. So Friday is when he's asking for a joint discovery, or he wants both parties, if they can agree on the discovery process, to file an order together, a joint motion or joint order saying, hey, this is when we're going to do discovery and how we're going to do it. But if they can't agree, they need to file separately their proposed discovery order for the judge to look at by 5 p.m. on Monday. And you'll notice 5 p.m. appears after every date. 5 p.m., 5 p.m., 5 p.m. And that's because this judge says that he wants everything, all briefing must be filed by 5 p.m. on the day of the briefing deadline. Yay. I love that, because that will save me from through dinner time and into the evening hitting F5 or hitting refresh or on my or dragging down on my phone, trying to refresh the docket over and over and over and over again, waiting for the new filings to appear. Which there's an issue with Pacer I may get to a little bit later. If we go to if I drop the Comey thing and show you some asides. But anyway, I love that. Things being due at 5 p.m., not them showing up by 11:59 p.m. on the day they were due. And hopefully no 4 a.m. filings at the last minute either, like we saw in the Combs case. So those are the first dates that stuff's due. This Friday, or failing that, this coming Monday, we should get discovery information. And this case does involve classified information. So that's going to mean SIPA. So there's going to be some things that they have to arrange with how to deal with the classified information. So the first round of motions, though, such as motion to dismiss, which we can expect that, and motions for various disqualifying Lindsay Halligan, we're expecting an order like that. The first round of motions are due October 20th, and then government must respond by November 3rd, and then replies are due by November 10th, and then a hearing will happen November 19th. So before Thanksgiving, this thing could be dead. If Patrick Fitzgerald, who knows how to file motions, is successful in disqualifying Lindsay Halligan, challenging her appointment, or filing motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution, which he's going to do, and it's going to be compelling. this thing could be, he could file that and get the replies, and then the hearing happens on November 19th, and the judge may say, I don't want to carry this over the Thanksgiving holiday, and kill the case right then and there. I would not be surprised. And you should not be surprised either. Additional trial motions by Halloween, October 30th, Hallows Eve. Government responses by November 13th, then defendant replies by November 20th, and a hearing on motions December 9th. So we have hearings scheduled from November 19th and December 9th. But this is all as if there's not going to be a superseding indictment that changes all these dates. And there will be a superseding indictment. For sure. That's why you file something as bare bones as what this is. It's a placeholder because the statute of limitations was running out on this charge within a week. And so they filed this placeholder indictment after failing to get another one across the grand jury. And this is just a placeholder indictment, and there's going to be a superseding one, and surely it will have more information in it than this does. And that'll change the schedule. Now, according to media who were at the courthouse today, prosecution advised the judge. Now, this is going to be really exciting. This is really exciting, guys. According to media who were at the courthouse today, the prosecution advised the judge that materials in the case included a significant amount of classified information, and DOJ is not sure whether it will use SIPA, which is the procedures for handling classified information in a case where you need to keep things that are classified, or it's going to declassify the information, and they are leaning towards that. They're leaning towards declassifying it. More documents for us, right? And Lemons said, we just got our hands on this. We just got moved earlier this week. They filed their first appearance on the docket on October 6th or 7th. October 7th, the day before the arraignment. These two U.S. attorneys filed their appearance on the docket. So they just got put on this case. Like, yeah, we just got here, Judge. We need to take a look at this stuff. It'll either be declassify it all or the fastest SIPA process you've ever seen in your life, is what they told the judge. I love that. And, guys, look, I'm not hiding the ball here. I don't think this Comey thing is about getting Comey. I don't think it's about getting Comey. And the narrative, sure. In the narrative, it's giving some red meat to MAGA who have been convinced that Comey's a bad guy. So it's red meat for that. And yeah, the way Trump's going to talk about it, the way Cash is going to talk about it and others, is it's going to be about getting Comey. And when they don't get Comey, the cope is going to be that Comey flipped and this is some secret deal with Comey, or the judge was crooked, or whatever. MAGA will cope however they're going to cope, okay? And I don't mean to insult anybody with that. I'm sorry if you feel insulted by me saying that, but I think this indictment is set up to fail from the very beginning, and I'll keep explaining that as we go along. I think the intention here is to carry on the witch hunt for... Where's she at? I think the intent here is to carry on the witch hunt for this witch right here. I think this is all about her. And I think this is all about getting things declassified so they can go after her. I think it's all about continuing the witch hunt that has been going on for 10 years now against her. That's what I think is going on. And going after her cronies. And setting up DOJ to go after her cronies. And sometimes to do that, you have to take circular routes, you have to flank, you have to do some clever things. And I think that's what this is about. Maybe I'm wrong. And as we go through the Comey case, which I'm very excited about, obviously, Maybe as we go through this, my mind will be changed and I will be convinced. Okay. Maybe I will be convinced that everything Trump says in this post right here is absolutely true. That Comey is one of the worst human beings in this country. One of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to. And that he's corrupt. And that he engaged in various illegal and unlawful acts. Maybe I will be convinced of that, okay? And I'm willing to be convinced of that. But you got to convince me. That's the whole thing. You got to convince me. And I'm not going to be convinced by narrative, and I'm not going to be convinced by emotion. I will be convinced by documents put on the record and testimony put on the record and an adversarial procedure in a courtroom that proves this to be the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what will convince me. So we'll see. And I'm open to it. I genuinely am open to it. But like with so many things, just like with the indictments against Trump, just like with the allegations that are thrown around against Trump and others who work for Trump, they come loaded with a ton of narrative and emotion from the opposition. And when you scratch below the surface, when you dig into it and you look at the documents and you look at what people swore to and what the facts are, what the evidence are or is, it comes up pretty light. It comes up pretty light. And that's what happens with Comey over and over and over again, in my view. Okay. Like the rest of us, Comey's counsel doesn't know who person 3 is. And they told the judge that. They're like, this indictment is lacking in details. We don't know who person 1 is or who person 3 is. Now, a lot of us have deduced who person 1 is. Or not a lot of us. Some of us have deduced who person 1 is. And I'll go through that. Well, here, I'll go to that right now. Even though we did it when the indictment came out, we did this. This matters. So when you look on the docket, you'll see document numbers 1, 3, 4, 7, and then 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. So document 2 is missing. Document 5 and 6 are missing. We don't know what those are. They may have some interesting information for us. They're not on here for some reason. There's a reason they're not on this docket here. Really would like to see them, and maybe they could answer some questions. But until then, the only things we have to go by out of the 25 entries on the docket here are the actual indictment, which is only 2 pages, and then the report of the grand jury's failure to concur in an indictment. And when you look at these 2 documents, both of them are stamped the same date, September 25th. Both of them are signed by Lindsay Halligan. Both of them are against Comey, of course. But when you look at the failure to concur on an indictment, there are some obvious typos or something, because this shows 3 counts. This indictment, this draft indictment, which the grand jury did not approve, okay, which was not successful, which failed, has 3 counts. Count 1, false statement. Count 2, false statement. And then count 3, obstruction. And it is very clear that count 1 in this indictment references the same testimony to the Senate on September 30th. They both are the same day, September 30th, where Comey, according to this, made a false statement. And this false statement, the first one in count 1, says that he falsely stated to a U.S. senator that he, James Comey, did not remember, quote, being taught of person one's approval of a plan concerning person two in the 2016 presidential election. Well, we know that that means person one is Hillary Clinton and that person two is Donald Trump. We know that for sure because that language perfectly matches Ratcliffe's memo and the Durham Annex and the Clinton Plan Intelligence, which I've done previous episodes on. Okay. And in the Clinton Plan Intelligence, the Russian memoranda that they got from Dutch intelligence, which had infiltrated Russian hackers and looked at their reports they were sending back to the SVR or whatever, that person one is Hillary Clinton and she approved a plan concerning framing Donald Trump in 2016 to distract from the use of her email server scandal. And so that means person one is Hillary and person two is Donald Trump. And then the count two in this indictment says that he lied in the same Senate hearing when he stated that he had not authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding the FBI investigating person one, meaning Hillary. So they're saying he lied when he said to Senator Cruz, nope, I have not authorized anyone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source to the news media regarding the investigation into Hillary Clinton. And that's a lie, according to the indictment, because person three had in fact been authorized by Comey to talk to the news media about an FBI investigation concerning Hillary Clinton. These two counts make perfect sense, and they connect, right? You can see how they connect with their use of the same date, the use of person 1, 2, and 3, right? But when you get to page 3 of this indictment, the failed draft one, there's a typo and it says count 2. And it's the obstruction charge. And it's like, wait a minute, count 2 is here. Also, the font changed, and it looks like it's a different scanner. What's going on here? And it's signed by Lindsay Halligan, and the foreperson though is stamped right here. You can see the bottom of the signature there, and that's because they failed to return this draft indictment. They failed to approve this one. So Lindsay Halligan gave it to him again, but this time removed what was count 1 right here. The one that talked about Hillary's approval of a plan to frame Trump in 2016, removed that count and put what was count 2 as count 1. And then the grand jury approved that. Then here's count 2, which is the obstruction. But we still have a person 1 and a person 3. Everything else is the same. So that we can deduce by looking at the failed draft right here, the failed indictment, that person 1 is Hillary Clinton, but we need to know who person 3 is. And the person who it makes a lot of sense that it would be is McCabe. But it does not literally say. And in order for a defense counsel to provide a defense for the defendant, he needs to know exactly who person 1 and person 3 are in the indictment. So they need more information. Now, besides McCabe, it could be Richmond, which is someone who lots of people think it's Daniel Richmond. Or it could be Baker or Ribicki, who are two people who were looked at for possibly leaking. Well, they did provide information to the New York Times about an investigation. And they did so thinking, Baker said he did so thinking that he was supposed to do so and that Comey wanted him to. Or it could be someone else. And all of those possibilities are problematic for the prosecution, whether it's Richmond or it's Baker or whoever. It's problematic. And let's get into why. The central witness in this case, who investigators talked to, they talked to Daniel Richmond, which makes you think that Daniel Richmond might be person 3, right? And he was a special government employee, and we got the leaked the leak investigation memos earlier this summer, and it was revealed that Daniel Richmond was a special government employee who Comey had hired and wanted him to be the his liaison to the media or something like that. Whatever it was they were saying. I don't even remember what they were saying. I'm noticing that my browser is a little tight on the screen here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Like, it's not showing. Hold up. I think it's a size issue where my browser is the wrong size for some reason. It filled it out a little better there. Okay. Sorry, I got the okay, now it's okay. I really should stop recording to fix this. Okay, there we go. So, Blumenthal. Don't need him on the screen. Let's change that. There we go. All right. Federal prosecutors investigating former FBI Director James Comey for allegedly making false statements to Congress determined that a central witness in their probe would prove quote unquote problematic and likely prevent them from establishing their case to a jury. Sources familiar, again, these are probably the employees who used to work in the Eastern District of Virginia. Don't know that for sure, but probably are. Said, look, we talked to this guy, Comey, pleaded not guilty, blah, 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 Justice Department officials. Daniel Richmond, a law professor who prosecutors allege Comey authorized to leak to the media. See, according to this article, the person is Daniel Richmond. That person 3 is Daniel Richmond, according to this article. A law professor who prosecutors allege Comey authorized to leak information to the press told investigators that the former FBI director instructed him not to engage with media on at least 2 occasions, and unequivocally said Comey never authorized him to provide information to a reporter anonymously ahead of the 2016 election. Now, there's some qualifiers, aren't they? On 2 occasions, Daniel Richmond saying on 2 occasions, he told me, no, don't talk to the media. And he unequivocally told Daniel Richmond, you are not authorized to provide information to a reporter anonymously ahead of the 2016 election. Okay, well, what about after the 2016 election? Well, that was looked into. It was called Arctic Haze. The investigation was called Arctic Haze, and it was one of the investigations here that we got all these leaks about. And the account Cody Avenue. I'm not sure exactly how to say his handle, but it's Cody AVE. This little account does great work, and they put together this fantastic graphic on all the different media leak investigations. Arctic Haze, Echoes Fates, Foggy Fall, Genetic Christmas, Riding Hood, Siren's Lure, Tropical Vortex, and the Schiff Whistleblower leak investigation. All of these leak investigations. He put together this great graphic, which I love very much. And Arctic Haze, well, Arctic Haze was about what? Arctic Haze was about the Dutch intelligence, Hillary's plan to frame Trump, the Renteria memo, all of those things. And one of the reporters who leaked it was Michael Schmidt, or got information was Michael Schmidt. And Michael Schmidt was a contact with Daniel Richmond, this investigation found. Okay. So, okay, this fits. This fits with the indictment. It could be this. But what happened in that investigation? Well, on November 22nd, 2019, the Arctic Haze investigative team interviewed Richmond. According to Richmond, Comey and Richmond talked about the hammering Comey was taking from the media concerning his handling of the mid-year exam, the Clinton email investigation. Richmond opined Comey took comfort in the fact that Richmond had talked to the press about his feelings regarding Comey's handling and decision-making on the mid-year investigation. Richmond claimed Comey never asked him to talk to the media. According to Richmond, he and Comey had a private conversation in Comey's office in January 2017. The conversation pertained to Comey's decision to make a public statement on the mid-year exam investigation. Comey told Richmond that the tarmac meeting between Lynch and Bill Clinton, was not the only reason which played into Comey's statement on the mid-year exam investigation, the July 5th statement where he announced no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case. According to Richmond, Comey told Richmond of Lynch's characterization of the investigation as a matter and not a full investigation. And Richmond recalled Comey told him there was some weird classified material related to Lynch which came to the FBI's attention. Thanks to the Durham Annex, we now know that was the Russian memorandas, the Russian reports that the Dutch intel intercepted. And they were talking about how there was a deal between Lynch and Clinton that Lynch wouldn't let the investigation go too far. Remember? That's what he's talking about. Comey did not fully explain the details of the information. Comey told Richmond about the classified information, including the source of the information. Remember, Richmond was a special government employee for the FBI, and he had a clearance. So Comey could tell him these things. Richmond understood the information could be used to suggest Lynch might not be impartial with regards up to the conclusion of the mid-year exam investigation. Richmond understood the information about Lynch was highly classified and it should be protected. Richmond was an SGE, special government employee, at the time of this meeting in January 2017. According to Richmond, he and Schmidt is the guy at the New York Times, right here, Michael Schmidt. According to Richmond, he and Schmidt had a conversation shortly after the meeting with Comey in or around January 2017. Richmond claimed Schmidt brought up the classified information and knew more about it than Richmond did. Richmond was pretty sure he did not confirm the classified information. However, Richmond told the interviewing agents he was sure, quote, with a discount, unquote, which I don't know what that means, that he did not tell Schmidt about the classified information. Richmond did not know who gave Schmidt the classified information. Richmond acknowledged he had many discussions with Schmidt about the article as an SGE, a special government employee, and even after he resigned as a special government employee. Richmond acknowledged he contributed more to the article than what was attributed to him by name. Richmond also stated he knew Schmidt talked to numerous other government sources for information on the article. And the article at issue here, the one they're talking about, is, do I have it pulled up here? It's the big, long Comey one that I actually like a lot. Hold on just a second. Let me pause recording and I'll find it. This one. Comey tried to shield the FBI from politics, then he shaped an election. And if you see right here, Michael Schmidt is one of the people, one of the authors. or contributors to this article. This article is from April 22nd, 2017. It's before Comey was fired. And if you Control F and search Richmond, you see that Richmond comes up 3 times in here. And he's described as a confidant of Comey, a longtime friend and confidant of Comey. And it quotes him on different things. And this article is like what Richmond is trying to do in this article, the way he's contributed to it, is he's trying to frame Comey in a charitable and even like laudable, like praiseworthy way, which was a bold thing to do at the time. Because if you remember, people on the left, including people at the New York Times, hated Comey because, and they probably still hate Comey. They don't have amnesia. They still hate Comey. They just hate Trump more because they agree with Hillary that Comey is the reason that she lost. Not because he closed the investigation on her, but because he made a big deal of it. And he made the announcement days before the election that it was reopened because of the Wiener laptop. And this is what Hillary still says to this day.
There is no such thing. But I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off. And the evidence for that intervening event is, I think, compelling, persuasive, and so we overcame a lot in the campaign. We overcame an enormous barrage of negativity, of false equivalency, and so much else. But as Nate Silver, who doesn't.
And I've looked at Nate Silver's article before, and he uses data to show that the Comey letter of October 28th had a big impact on voters' decision to not show up. Voters who were leaning Clinton decided, no thanks. It reignited all of that Clinton email stuff, which they all thought that she was guilty of anyway. Really, they all were like, yeah, this isn't a good thing. But then the FBI closes the investigation. They're like, well, maybe there was no there. It was bad handling, though. She shouldn't have handled her emails that way. And then the investigation gets reopened on October 28th, days before the election. They're like, oh yeah, now I remember how turned off I was to voting for her. Anyway, we're talking about people who are fickle anyway. Elections are often, I guess every election is decided by the most fickle and peripherally informed person who still goes and votes, right? Weird. Those people are weird. Weird. Anyway, so this is the article. I've gone through this entire article on my show before. It was a long time ago when I went through my article right here, which had to do with the leak investigation. And I used that article and connected it to a bunch of things because that article talks about the Renteria memo and the Clinton plan intelligence. But we didn't know near as much then as we know now, thanks to the Durham Annex. So the investigation, the conclusion of the investigation, Arctic Hayes, who looked at Daniel Richmond for leaking, said the investigation has not yielded sufficient evidence to criminally charge any person, including Comey or Richmond, with making false statements or with the substantive offenses under investigation. See, also DOJ National Security Division historically has not approved prosecution of per confirmatory sources of classified information, meaning there's classified information that DOJ has. That classified information ends up in the media. People from DOJ or FBI talk to those same media people, and those media people bring up the classified information. You don't then prosecute the person who's there talking to them unless they're the source of it, and you can prove that. You don't prosecute them just for being pure confirmatory sources. The investigation has also not identified any evidence regarding any other specific person who had access to the classified information, who willfully discussed the classified information with any of the reporters. And this matches, I don't remember if it was in here. Was it in this? And this may not work. I can't remember if it was in this declassification or another one where it talks about how Peter Strzok was tasked to go and talk to the New York Times, and he was approved to talk to them. And it was him and Lisa Page. And when they went to talk to them, the New York Times already had this classified information. And they were like, whoa, we had no idea they had this classified information. How did they have this? And it put them in a weird spot. And they made a report about it. Lisa Page specifically, as one of the attorneys, made a report about how New York Times already had this classified information. I didn't give it to them. Another thing about Arctic Caves, which I pointed out the last time we talked about it, is that there's a lot of this that is still classified. This document has a lot of things that are classified. There we go. Here we go. I just found it. Awesome. April 2017 article, which again, I'm 99% sure is this one right here. Definitely is. During an interview with the investigative team, Peter Strzok stated he believed FBI executive management told them to meet with the New York Times. Strzok said he recalled being told to provide an investigator-level briefing on the mid-year exam investigation. Okay, this is in 2017. He's supposed to, and it was on March 10th, 2017, March 30th, and April 10th. So 3 times he talked to them. He and Page. And Page is the lawyer who's advising, like, this is what you can and can't say, and blah, blah, blah. So they're going to meet with the New York Times, and the New York Times already had the classified information. They knew about the Renteria memo and the Clinton plan intelligence. There was some weird Russian intelligence that somehow the U.S. had gotten that said that there was this arrangement between Lynch and that they wouldn't let it go. There was an email that said that Lynch wasn't going to let the investigation into Hillary go too far. Strzok told investigators that he did not recall the New York Times having the classified information, but Page did. And she specifically recalled the classified information and took a break from the meeting to discuss with Strzok that the New York Times had that classified information. Page indicated she alerted her supervisors about the fact the New York Times had the classified information. According to FBI Office of Personal Affairs, the OPA, the New York Times advised them in April 10th, 2017 interview about the content of the article, including the classified information. And this next portion here is redacted. It looks like it's maybe 1 or 2 sentences. So that'd be on the last interview they had is when they said they had the classified information. Now, Strzok says he doesn't remember them having it, which is weird. But he did not recall them having that information. But Page does, and she has descriptions of it. And if you remember, I'm going to give Lisa Page, I'm going to go ahead and give her some credibility here, because we know that in the McCabe IG investigation, she told the truth. She came clean with IG Horowitz and his investigators about being instructed to serve as a source to Devlin Baird at the Wall Street Journal for that October article, remember? She didn't tell 4 different sets of lies like McCabe did, her boss. She told the IG the truth. Did she tell him all the truth? I don't know. But she definitely told more truth than McCabe did. And I don't recall the IG, Horowitz, putting anywhere in his reports that Lisa Page lacked candor, meaning lied to investigators. Now, I'm not trying to whitewash Lisa Page, okay? What I'm trying to do is say, in an instance here where Strzok is saying, I don't recall, don't remember that, and Page is saying, no, I remember, and this is how it was, and this is when they told us, and this is how new, and I was surprised, and we broke from the meeting to discuss it. I'm going to go ahead and say that Page is she's probably telling the truth. Okay. And then I just read this next section. Now look at all these redactions that we have about Richmond. There's a really good chance that person 3 is Daniel Richmond, and it would fit because what's at issue here? The Clinton plan intelligence, which fits with person 1 being Hillary Clinton in the indictment. And then person 2 is Donald Trump, and person 3 is Daniel Richmond. Makes sense. But as I was saying, the problem is Richmond explicitly said, I wasn't authorized, and I didn't do this. I went to the New York Times on my own. I have a relationship with Michael Schmidt. But there is this one line here. Although Richmond later told investigating agents Comey never asked him to talk to the media, comma, and then redacted. So this section in particular, right here, tells the tale. This section right here seems to be the section that if these redactions were lifted, we would all go, aha. That's why they went forward with this, right? Okay. Let's go back. According to prosecutors, this is the article from ABC News. It's recent. But according to prosecutors who investigated the circumstances surrounding Comey's testimony in 2020, they looked at it for 2 months, using Richmond's testimony to prove that Comey knowingly provided false statements to Congress would result in, quote, likely insurmountable problems for the prosecution. Investigators detailed those conclusions in a lengthy memo last month, recommending that the office, Eastern District of Virginia, not move forward in charging Comey. But then Trump selected Lindsay Halligan to replace the U.S. attorney, and she's a temporary appointment. I think it's 90 days she can be there is what it is, I think. She's acting U.S. attorney. During grand jury proceedings, prosecutors don't have to show, okay, we already know about that. Halligan's deputy, Maggie Cleary, raised similar concerns about the case the same week the former White House aide, Halligan, turned prosecutor asked a grand jury to indict Comey, bolstering the conclusion that no single piece of evidence could demonstrate that Comey lied to Congress, and she warned against relying on Richmond, who she described to colleagues as a hostile witness. Meaning he's Comey's confidant and friend. Prosecutors further expressed concerns about the department's ability to take the case to trial quickly due to problems identifying all the relevant materials that would need to be handed over to Comey's lawyers. They also raised alarms over the potential for Comey's defense to cite the statute of limitations in the case, which, ran out just days before he was indicted. Prosecutors rushed to secure the indictment before those ran out. Comey is expected to plead not guilty, which he did. Okay. When prosecutors met with Richmond in September of this year, so right before this indictment, he told them that he never served as an anonymous source for Comey or acted at Comey's direction while he was FBI director, sources familiar with this interview told ABC News. In at least 2 cases, when Richmond was asked if he should speak to the press, Comey advised him not to do so. Investigators who reviewed materials from Comey's emails, including his correspondence with Richmond, could not identify an instance when Comey approved leaking material to a reporter anonymously. Richmond, a longtime friend of Comey, has previously acknowledged his role as an intermediary between Comey and reporters after Comey was fired from his role, including leaking memos. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about while FBI director. That was the question it's based on, that the indictment's based on. The indictment says that it's true that Comey authorized someone else at FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports regarding the investigation of Hillary Clinton. Richmond is saying, I wasn't authorized to be anonymous. And while he was director, he never authorized me to speak, or not never. I shouldn't say never. But there were times when Comey told him not to, or advised him not to. I shouldn't say told him not to. That sounds like an order. Advised him not to do so. These little words matter. Told to, advised to or not to, told not to, while director, whether he was anonymous or named in the story, all of these, every single word matters. And that's where it gets problematic. And that's what a defense attorney is going to pick apart. They're going to look for all of these little things that make it not a lie. And James Comey is not dumb. I had a friend on True Social. I say friend, a friendly account to me on True Social was like, James Comey's not dumb. Like, people should really not underestimate him. He's a wordsmith. He's very careful with his language. He's a longtime prosecutor. He was a prosecutor and was worked at the AG for years before he was at FBI. He's prosecuted many people, some very bad people. He knows what the F he's doing. And he knows how to craft his words and how to maneuver in a Senate hearing, which is what he was doing. Investigators are focused on Comey's actions as FBI director, including the alleged leak of information about Trump and Clinton campaigns ahead of the 2016 election, to find evidence that Comey intentionally misled Congress. But look, Daniel Richmond is talking about, well, before the election, I was never authorized. And then after, I was advised not to by Comey. I was advised not to speak to the media, right? Okay, back to my thread. John Durham also met with investigators. And he told them that prosecutors investigating James Comey, he told them that John Durham, was unable to uncover evidence that would support a false statement or obstruction charge against James Comey. And that was in Tropic Vortex. And John Durham met with the investigators in the Eastern District of Virginia. He met with them in August, so before Daniel Richmond. Let me see. Durham's team investigated whether Comey's testimony that he was unaware of the intelligence report and that the allegation doesn't ring any bells was intentionally misleading. That's what Durham's team investigated. Well, aha. That's what the original count 1 was. Where Comey said he did not remember being taught of person 1, Hillary Clinton's, approval of a plan concerning person 2. And if you remember in that testimony, we looked at that and we picked it apart in a previous episode. Comey ends up saying, yeah, the way you're characterizing it doesn't ring a bell. And I read Ratcliffe's letter and I didn't really understand it. And I pointed out that, the way we think about this 3 years later, 4 years after Comey looked at that stuff when he was FBI director, when that first came in, the Clinton Plan Intelligence first came in, it wasn't called the Clinton Plan Intelligence. That's what Durham called it in his report. And it wasn't called, I can't even think of it right now. But so the way Comey would remember it at that time would be how it was presented to him in the context and at that time. And this matters. They might have called it it was called the Russian memoranda by some. Also, it's highly classified and was still classified at that time. So it's not like Comey could be like, oh yeah, so yeah, we talked to the Dutch and they had this hacker group that was blah, 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 and go into the details. He couldn't do that. He had to be careful in how he talked about it. Well, I've already gone through another. I was going to rabbit trail to go back to that, but the way it was presented to him the point is the way it was described to him in that hearing, if that doesn't match up with how it was described to him and he understood it in the context of when he was an FBI director, that's an out for him. Is what I'm saying. I'm not whitewashing him, just like I wasn't whitewashing Lisa Page. I'm not whitewashing Comey in the hearing. I'm saying that these individual words matter and the characterization of it matters, and he's going to pay attention to every qualifier and every little character and phrase and word and how it's exactly what the senator is asking. He's going to answer that question exactly, the exact question that he's being asked. It's not conversational. It's interrogatories from a senator in a hearing. So he's going to be very careful. And if you watch that hearing, he was very careful, which was frustrating for the senators because they're trying to make 30-second sound bites and they're trying to play gotcha, which is what they always do. And Comey's fully aware of that, and he's making sure not to play that game. They'll say it's evasive, and it comes off evasive. Sure, he's evading the gotcha game that they're playing. In doing that, did he lie? That's what Halligan is saying she's going to prove. She's going to prove that he did lie when he did that. But that's challenging because Durham already looked at all of this. He met with this team in late August. He recommended in his leak investigation, which spanned 4 years. Well, no, it didn't span 4 years. The Durham leak investigation went Tropic Vortex. There it is. It went from 3 years, March 2017 to March 2020. And at the end of that investigation, Durham recommended no charges. No prosecution of Baker or anyone else. That ends up connecting to Baker and Ribicki, Comey's chief of staff. So anyway, McCabe is the one who we already know, thanks to the IG report, was leaking information to the Wall Street Journal in 2016 and lied about it on at least 4 occasions to the IG. And we went through that in the last episode. In detail, we went through that. Baker and Ribicki are who Durham was investigating, and he was also investigating Comey. We can go to this. And we got that right here, and it had to do with a March 2017 unapproved disclosure to the public of classified information. And Durham, after looking at all of this and investigating it for 3 years exactly, closed it, and he kept on opening it. And look, he looked at the October 2016 article, which contained the disclose this right here. It's this is the one that McCabe leaked information about the investigation in the laptop. Remember how he was trying to characterize himself as like being some sort of hero in the FBI? And there was another October article, which is it in this one? It's April. That's WAPO. There's another October article which talked about something else that had to do with the investigation into Trump. What is it? Did I bookmark it here? This one. October 31st, 2016, investigating Donald Trump, FBI sees no clear link to Russia. And it's New York Times, and it's Eric Lichtblow is one of the people that was investigated, how he got all these leaks and had information he wasn't supposed to have. And of course, this influenced the public's perception of the investigation into Trump, which there was no investigation of Trump. Trump was not under investigation while Comey was FBI director. But the media lied and characterized it as an investigation of Trump. And for obvious reasons. They wanted him to lose the election. But during Tropic Vortex, Durham looked at these media leaks and found no way to charge them. He says right here, that had to do with the 2016 New York Times article, indicated there were two government sources for the article. The United States Postal Inspection Service, which was brought in to help because one of the targets of the investigation, or the subjects of it, I should say, was a former employee of the branch handling the investigation. So there was conflict there. But the USPIS investigation and Durham, they revealed that Baker disclosed classified information to the New York Times under the belief he was ultimately instructed to and authorized to do so by his boss. Look. Baker did so under the belief that he was... Oh, my picture's in the way. Let me get rid of that. Under the belief he was ultimately instructed and authorized to do so by then FBI Director James Comey. For example, during interviews, Baker indicated FBI Chief of Staff James Rybicki instructed him, Baker, to disclose the information to the New York Times. And Baker understood Rybicki was conveying this instruction and authorization from Comey. Additional details are classified and are included in the attachment, which we don't have. Okay, so does that mean that person 3 is Baker? And that Comey had authorized Baker to serve as a source? Is James Rybicki going to be a witness in this case? See, it seems like Daniel Richman was person 3, but looking at Durham's document right here from February 25th, 2020, closing the case, said no, Baker understood. His belief was that he was authorized to provide the information to the New York Times. That instruction came from James Rybicki. And as Durham investigated this, he ultimately decided, look, Based on the evidence, which included interviews, access to email and phone records, and redacted, potentially applicable law and criminal statutes, and the USA principles of prosecution, the USA Durham, United States Attorney Durham, made a memo, which is called the USA Durham Memo, which we've never seen, would love to see. Maybe it's going to be used in this case. It's going to be used by the defense. The defense is going to want that memo. It recommended no prosecution of Baker or anyone else. The full details of that are in that memo. Patrick Fitzgerald is certainly going to want that memo. So if person 3 is Richmond, there's problems. He's already looked at, decided not to prosecute him or Comey. But we have a lot of redactions here, which could answer some questions, right? If it's McCabe, well, McCabe's a proven liar 4 times over at least. If it's Baker or Ribicki, Durham already investigated them and recommended no prosecution. That makes them problematic. As this article, as the former prosecutors for that office or employees for that office said, it's problematic. But these filings are going to be super interesting. Patrick Fitzgerald, the defense counsel, has already said that he expects that he's going to file a batch of motions very soon, including abuse of the grand jury process and outrageous government conduct motion, and certainly a motion for vindictive prosecution, because all these statements that Trump has made against James Comey while president recently, the Cash's book, Government Gangsters, episodes of Dan Bongino's show, interviews that Cash Patelis gave, the firing of the attorneys and the other people in the office, and then appointing Trump's personal defense attorney and real estate attorney, Lindsay Halligan, who's never been a prosecutor, to that office, just so that days later she can bring this very thin indictment. It's going to make for one heck of a motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution. Will the judge approve it? I don't know. I don't know. Should he? I don't know. We don't know enough. What I do know is that based on the information that we have, there are some issues with this. And I would caution everybody, regardless of what you think about James Comey, and guys, I'm fully aware that most of my audience thinks James Comey is a no good, very bad bastard of a man. I'm fully aware, guys, fully aware. And I love y'all. I love it when you disagree with me. I love it when you give me your commentary. And I love trying to promote understanding over reacting. And so I'm trying to promote and give y'all as the best understanding you can have of the situation. Enhance your situational awareness. Who person 3 is matters, of course. And all the candidates that we're aware of, who person 3 could be, there are problems with them, and there's openings for Patrick Fitzgerald to exploit. And you should be aware of that. And there are reasons that this indictment doesn't look too good. But there are also reasons to expect a superseding indictment, which may involve other figures, which may carry a lot more information. And we may be sitting here a week from now or 2 weeks from now or so, and I'm going to be reading that to you, and I may be going, oh my God, this is a horse of a different color. This makes James Comey look so incredibly deceptive. And wow, this is bad, right? Or we could read a motion to dismiss here in a week or so and be like, how is the prosecution ever going to overcome that? Who knows? What I'm most excited about right now, anyway, what I'm most excited about, you guys already know. declassifying. Declassifying all these records that are here. And that would help with so many things. Radical transparency. There would be a narrative here that Trump tried to get Comey and wasn't successful, but at least he tried. But now we got all this declassified information, and then eyes turn to McCabe, or eyes turn to someone who actually I think is, or maybe we all agree, is much nastier person. And ultimately, I think it swings the story, the arc of the Trump story and the Trump DOJ. It swings that more towards transparency and the deconstruction of what happened between 2016 and now. Gets us closer to getting the glance. And what do we all want here? We say justice. We say, I want justice. Lots of people say they want justice. And as we talked about before, so many times, so often, what they really mean is, I want this particular person who I don't like embarrassed. I want them to suffer. They want a bloodletting, literally or figuratively. They look at how people who they like, who they agree with on politically and whatnot, how they've been treated, and they want that same treatment doled out to others who they perceive to be the opposition, right? Completely natural. It's completely understandable to feel that way. It's very human to feel that way. But that's not justice. Justice is holding people accountable for their wrongdoing, and doing so in a way that upholds values, that keeps values in mind, integrity intact as you hold people accountable. And that's what I want too. And I also want transparency. So the process that is before us with this Comey thing looks like it's going to get us more transparency, more declassification, in such that there is wrongdoing. I do sincerely hope that there is accountability for that wrongdoing, whether it's Comey's wrongdoing or anybody else's. I also think that the way I'm imagining this case going, the way you're imagining it going, just prepare for it to go whatever is the most entertaining route. Because that's probably the most likely route that it's going to take, right? That's probably the most likely route. Also, I feel like I'm at a pretty good wrapping up point for this. I promised to go over to Comey memos, but maybe I'll save that. I think I'll save that. I know I said I would, but this episode has gone on. I don't want to do another 3-hour episode. I've done some really long episodes lately, and I'm happy to do it, but it's always better for me to do a little bit more concise of an episode, right? And one of the last things I should mention to you, I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to show you one thing from the memos. And that one thing is that Patrick Fitzgerald, who is Comey's attorney right now, his defense attorney, received some of those memos. Comey sent on May 14th, 2017, right around when he was fired, right after, I believe. He sent copies of memos 2, 4, 6, and 7 from his personal email account to the personal email account of one of his attorneys, Patrick Fitzgerald. That's right. Fitzgerald was retained counsel to Comey all the way back then. Comey redacted the second paragraph of Memo 7 because it involved some foreign affairs, and Comey deemed it irrelevant. And on May 17th, Fitzgerald forwarded these 4 memos to Comey's other attorneys, David Kelly and Daniel Richmond, the same Daniel Richmond who might be person 3. So, seems like there would be a conflict there, but these guys know that. This brings me back around to wondering if Daniel Richmond is not person 3. And that person 3 is McCabe. And that's because McCabe lied and said that Comey had told him to talk to the media. And it would make more sense that Patrick Fitzgerald would be the attorney, the defense attorney now in this case, and that Daniel Richmond would be a potential witness in the case, one that would be hostile to the prosecution, meaning would be favorable to the defense, but someone the prosecution would be interested in talking to because, of course, there had been allegations and he had been investigated for leaking to the media on behalf of Comey, right? But if McCabe's the guy, then this is not an issue. This right here, this is not an issue at all. If Richmond's the guy, this could be an issue. Need more information. Okay. Also, there's one line from this report on Comey. How did he say it? Did he say it in case, or did he say one? Maybe I can find it by searching one day. What does it say? I remember. I'm going to show you this. It's about why Comey made the memos. There it is. There it is. All right, memo 4. Comey placed no classification. So Comey's writing these memos after he meets with Trump. And so Comey would be like he's a director, and he would be the original classification authority on these memos. And he would be the one who, like, they could be reviewed and then it would be found by another entity and they'd be found to contain classified information. But originally what makes them not for the public is the fact that the FBI director wrote the memos. And when writing them, he himself could place a classification on them, like confidential or secret or whatever. Comey placed no classification on them or dissemination controls or any other handling markings on Memo 4. However, on the last line of the first page of Memo 4, Comey typed into the text, "Note, because this is an unclassified document, I will be limited in how I describe what I said next." In other words, Comey wanted it to remain unclassified, and he knew it was going to be unclassified, and so he was careful with what he put into it so that a review of it later, which he knew would come whenever he was fired or resigned or whatever, he didn't want it to be stamped classified for some reason. He wanted it to be unclassified, so he kept he kept any classified information out of it. Comey told the OIG he included this note because he, quote, knew that there might come a day when he needed Memo 4 to protect himself and or the FBI, and it would be easier to accomplish that goal if it was unclassified. And so if he wrote it and included information that would have triggered classification, he couldn't keep it at home. And he was keen to make sure that he could keep his recollection recorded at home. He said he wrote Memo 4 in this way so that it would be clear that he was intentionally leaving something out, quote unquote. If he was later questioned about the contents of the documents. Now, could speculate, could do some kind of, some pretty exciting speculation about this. And I'm tempted to, but I won't. I'm going to be restrained, and I'm just going to highlight just how clever Comey is. This is an example of how clever, forward-thinking Comey is, and how he's thinking about other people after the fact, reviewing his materials, looking for ways to classify it. He's thinking about one day needing it in order to protect himself and to protect the FBI. He's thinking about what's coming up ahead in the years after 2016 and 2017. And I'm looking forward to finding out what other notes Comey wrote and what other things he prepared for a time such as this. Maybe they'll make him look really bad. But maybe not. Okay. I think that's a pretty good stopping point. If you guys enjoyed this episode, if you got something out of it, feel more informed, let me know. Let me know your comments. I really appreciate them, whether you leave them on Substack or Rumble or X or wherever. I like getting your feedback. I appreciate it very much. Hitting like does help it. Sharing it helps these episodes. And subscriptions to justhuman.substack.com or any of my support links also help a lot. And it lets me know that you like this and you want me to keep doing it, which I'm going to do. All right. I like this. I'm going to cut the episode here, and then I can make another episode that'll focus on a bunch of other little items of news that are out there that I think you guys would be interested in, and I want to catch you up on, including other things happening with the Eastern District of Virginia's prosecution office and the IG and Jack Smith spying on Republicans in Congress and the Senate, right? All right. Anyway, God bless all of you. Stay positive and stay human.